Good morning, Unity Spiritual Center. Welcome to our live streaming worship service this morning. My name is Reverend Dr. Gary. I'm here with Reverend Dr. Jane, and we're delighted that you're joining us this morning. Our mission is transforming lives and inspiring people to make a positive difference in our world, and we try to really focus on that, especially in these times when the world needs a lot of difference making. All right, let's begin with affirming our affirmation, which is our foundation principle. I'll speak it once and invite you to speak it with me. There is only one presence and one power active in my life and in the universe, God the good. Now together. There is only one presence and one power active in my life and in the universe, God the good. Well, we need some news that we can use with all the things that are going on. So let's talk about, let's see, we have the chaplain training, and we have E.J. Niles planning to do some work with us. Say more about that.
Sure. So I want to really invite anyone who is interested in becoming a chaplain to come to our online training. But also, if you're just curious, if you just would like to know more, we would really welcome you to be a part of that. And so this is the first time we've done an online training, and we're really looking at how the chaplain program can continue online in a virtual way. And so this would be, we're going to learn as we go. And I would like to invite anyone who is interested in this. There's no cost, although love offerings are gratefully accepted for the church. But if you go to your e-news last week and this coming week, you'll see a link that you can register.
So could someone just take the first part of it and just check it out?
Yes. And so it begins with a workshop on affirmative prayer. And anyone can come to this, whether you want to be a chaplain or not. It's just giving more information about affirmative prayer, how it fits into Unity's message and story, and just giving us more information on that. And anyone is welcome to come to that, even if you don't want to do the rest. All of this information is in your e-news, and you can follow the link and register just to get more information if you choose. So we'd love to have a big turnout for this. And so if it's anything at all that interests you, consider being a part of that. Also, Reverend E.J. Niles, a longtime Unity minister, used to be the Bible teacher in the ministerial program, and has continued her work, her really seminal work on spiral dynamics, on cultural evolution, and how that shows up in our world, and what we can do about what's going on. Also, she examines the prayer and our concepts of God, and there's one more, the Bible, through the lens of spiral dynamics. Very interesting work, and I highly recommend it. Again, you'll find the information for that. It's going to be Tuesdays at 1 p.m. 5 possible classes, and you can take any or all. You can just pick and choose if you want, but there's a way for you to sign up for that as well in the e-news. So I'm going to be there, and I invite anyone who's interested in this and wants to learn more to join us.
And we're also planning another Q process workshop starting sometime in October, early in October as well.
That's right.
Amber McKenzie is going to be doing an online 6-week program, and it'll be awesome. So if you're not receiving our e-news Wednesdays, do sign up to receive it. Go to unityspokane.org and sign up for our newsletter, and you'll be placed automatically on our e-news list. All right, well, it's time now to hear from Sean and Tani, live streaming right into our service today with their music.
There they are.
send my love over the mountains. I send my love over the sea. I send my love into the heavens, and it returns to me. I send my joy over the mountains. I send my joy over the sea. I send my joy into the heavens, and it returns to me. I send my power over the mountains. I send my power over the sea. I send my power into the heavens, and it returns to me. I send my peace over the mountains. I send my peace over the sea. I send my peace into the heavens, and it returns to me. I send my love over the mountains. I send my love over the sea. I send my love into the heavens, and it returns to me. And it returns to me.
Wow, that was special. Let's send our love. So as we get ready for our meditation experience, I invite us all just to simply become aware of where we are and when we are. Where we are is right here, when we are is right now. And so as we settle into this right here, right now moment, let us see if we can just distance ourselves from all the cares of the world that seem to envelop us in this moment as well. We'll come back to it in just a little bit, but first, let us begin to build that bridge, that connection. Begin to activate that part of us that can make the difference. It's part of the field of infinite possibilities, ready to bring forth that which is necessary and good. Let's go to that place in us that is here and now as an activity of spirit and presence. So to enter into that experience, let us bring into our awareness someone that is loving us right now. I wonder if you can reach into your awareness and just sense and feel a love coming to you. And go ahead and put a face to it if you like, but rather just feel what it feels like to be in absolute, unconditional love. We don't have to say anything or do anything or be anyone. You can just receive in this moment the love that is there, the love that is for each one of us. And as we open our hearts to the love that is coming into our experience, let us add an amplification to that awareness. by going ahead and bringing into our mind's eye someone or something to whom we would want to send this expression of care, love, appreciation, compassion. And as we feel into this awareness of presence, of love being sent and received, let us begin to build a greater connection, a greater experience of immersion in this awareness and this presence of love. By feeling connected to all of the people that this broadcast, this live streaming now, in this now moment is touching and will touch later on. But in this now moment, let us feel connected to all of those who are a part of this now moment, reaching inward, allowing this love to build a connection, heart to heart. Visualize it. See it in your awareness. A web, an interconnection, a neural net, a mycelium network. However we want to visualize our interconnection, let us just feel into this moment, recognizing our oneness, recognizing that we're a part of a greater whole. And then I invite all of those of us who are in this now moment together to think about all of the people in their lives, in your lives, in our lives, that would be benefited by this connection, by feeling at some perhaps unconscious level, but yet knowing in their spirit, in their awareness, there is a yearning, a longing, not only to belong, but to be a part of something. And so we welcome them as they join this interconnection, this web, this field of connection and care and appreciation and love. And we can even go deeper now. We can go and begin to build a connection to all of life. And so we open our hearts and minds now to know that every life is being affected, is a part of the experiences that are happening in this world. Birds of the air, fishes in the sea, all that walk upon this beloved earth, share in this experience of sorrow and suffering and neglect and separation and unrest and distrust. And yet we can all feel in our heart of hearts that our first step in this awakening is to recognize how difficult it is to be in parts of our family, in parts of this whole. There are parts of us that have yet to feel this connection, the capacity to at least be, while in it, recognizing that as we align with the presence, with the peace, with the love, and send it over the mountains, over the oceans, to every situation and circumstance that is beckoning for reconciliation, for restoration, for renewal, as well as all of the parts of us that have to be released and hospiced Let us now, in this present moment, as we feel our connection, as we feel a part of this network of love and peace, as we feel a part of a living organism, a Gaia, feeling the depths of our struggle, our suffering, and yet feeling the infinite and eternal presence of this love that lifts us into the awareness that with God all things are possible. With God all things are working together for greater good. And so we just feel into that hope, that desire, that yearning for that greater good, for fresh air, for rain, for freedom from fear or neglect or isolation or addiction. We allow that which is undesirable and that which is desired to coexist so that we can rise above and bring all that we have to bear in this present moment in absolute love and oneness. And now let us each individually, within our own heart, allow ourselves to receive precisely what is needed in this moment as we enter into the silence. Breathe in and release. Breathe in and release. And let us release ourselves now into the care and keeping of this presence of the Spirit, enabling us to be in this world and be an avenue through which that which is needed and necessary and good comes forth. And for this, we are grateful. So it is. Thank you, God. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Well, I sure needed that this morning because I'm finding myself feeling fear and concern about our planet, about the animals on our planet, about the fires, all the rest of it. And so thank you for helping me settle a little bit there. The last time I spoke, I tried to cram, 2 or 3 talks on being a good ancestor into one. And about halfway through my preparation, I realized that I needed to downsize considerably and take more sort of bite-sized chunks of ideas to ruminate upon. And so today is part 2 of being a good ancestor. And as I mentioned in part 1, this phrase, being a good ancestor, is part of a subtitle from the book Me and White Supremacy, and was a lifeline for me to continue reading that book. Because, here's why, nothing inspires me more than wanting to leave a more compassionate world for the next generation that is safe, that is environmentally sustainable, where everyone has an equal opportunity to thrive. And that is my vision. And the vision is very appealing. And it kind of rolls off the tongue pretty easily. Less easily is being clear as to how to go about doing that. I'm certainly reading a lot lately about cultural evolution and various facets of that, and learning, what is our current situation. I'm really educating myself on all of that. But I'm not being terribly successful in finding out exactly what to do about it. And this whole, area of not knowing what to do is standing in the way of doing anything at all. There's something called analysis paralysis. You may have heard of this. And I have to confess that I have spent a lot of time with my hands tied with analysis paralysis, with self-imposed overwhelm and confusion and just going around in circles. And I've come to see that analysis paralysis is a trick of the mind. It's an egoic strategy that is very effective in grinding change to a halt. And that happens through fatalistic thinking, nothing I do matters, it's just a drop in the bucket, this problem's too big to fix. All that kind of thinking can derail any good intentions that I start out with. And I believe that those kinds of responses are the exact reason that our culture is where it is right now. So what should we be doing in the face of all that's happening? How can we change the political scene, the divisive political scene? How can we hope to stop blatant corruption that is just sort of everywhere we look? How can we heal a worldwide pandemic? How can we fix the drought? How can we stop the wildflower? Not wildflowers, we don't want to stop those. How about the wildfires? How can we stop those? And what's next? Locusts? Raining frogs? I don't know. And so when I go down that route, it's very disempowering. And so consider that a much more empowering question is this: how can we utilize the current situation as a cataclysmic evolutionary catalyst? One of my favorite terms. How can we untether ourselves from analysis paralysis and use what is happening to drive evolutionary transformation, to evolve into a greater expression of who we have come here to be? Well, to begin with, we need to understand one thing. We cannot shift into a new way of thinking if we are seeing life through an old way of thinking. That's number one. And specifically, if we're looking through the eyes of the past and an unhealed past, our development will be hindered by this largely unconscious patterns of behavior that are going on. It's like an iceberg. An iceberg, we're only going to see the outer trappings of the culture in the top of the iceberg. And below the surface, though, is where all of those hidden collective beliefs are lurking that uphold the societal norms that our culture, is living right now. And in order for cultural development to grow beyond this present paradigm, those beliefs and assumptions have to be identified, they have to be questioned, they have to be challenged. And I think much of that is happening right now in our world. That's the good news. And that is good, because until we see it, we can't change it. And this very same iceberg exists for every one of us individually. Above the surface is the conscious mind, the cognitive thought. Below, all those hidden beliefs, assumptions that are really running the show, subconsciously. So both aspects of this work are necessary. Cleaning up our own internal backyard so that we can evolve beyond our present day development and vision. And helping to shift our outmoded cultural beliefs. Beliefs like polluting the earth is an okay thing to do, for instance. There comes a time when a tipping point arrives and we awaken to see that those beliefs are no longer just accepted as the norm. There's enough of us saying no to that things can shift. And I've come to realize that the immense importance that comes from healing our own past in this process. And without doing that work first, we just keep on dragging the past into the future like unwanted baggage. We just keep on dragging it. And so although that is definitely not the totality of the work, it is a foundational piece of it. Because if we don't, it will continue to quietly sabotage our individual and collective evolution into a more spiritually mature, awakened culture. And guess what? We're all being called to do this work. The Franciscan priest, Richard Rohr, says it this way: this collective call can only be truly answered by those who have done their own work of self-mastery. Otherwise, there's insufficient strength. There's not enough connection to the essential self to do the heavy lifting of transforming society. I couldn't say it better myself. And he goes on to say that any unfinished business within us will inhibit our availability to transformation. And it turns out that unfinished business can be inherited. It can be ancestral in nature. So let's unpack this a little bit. If I was to ask you what you inherited from your family, you might say my dad's eye color or my mother's laugh. We can often see family resemblances, and we inherit things from our families. Physical characteristics like skin, hair color, body shape can be passed down from parent to child. And we also inherit other characteristics. My brothers and I share our own versions of my father's family's very quirky sense of humor. We all do it in our own way, but it shows up as a family trait. And beyond that, psychological strengths and weaknesses, emotional tendencies, mental acuity, hormonal makeup, all of that can be inherited from our ancestors and stored in our personal and collective memory fields. When I think of my ancestors and what they've bequeathed to me, all I have to do is drop a fork on the floor. That's all I have to do. Because then I will immediately hear my grandmother's voice saying, "Oh, if you drop a fork, that means a woman is coming to visit. If you dropped a knife, it meant a man was coming. A spoon, a child. If they all fell down, well, the whole family's coming." And it's imprinted on my psyche, you see, numerous old wives' tales that she could just be counted on to express whenever the occasion arose. And that's inherited, that's embedded in my very DNA. There are not only physical aspects of our ancestry, but also mental and emotional dynamics are in play for all of us. Epigenetic research shows that dysfunction from trauma can be unconsciously passed down to our descendants. Dr. Rachel Yehuda, she's a professor of psychiatry and neuroscience, has done really extensive work in this area of transgenerational trauma. And she has found, for instance, that the descendants of Holocaust survivors were 3 times more likely to meet the criteria for PTSD than those in their community whose parents had not been through the Holocaust. The same neuroendocrine or hormonal abnormalities from PTSD were passed on even if they never spoke about what happened. It's done unknowingly. So these Holocaust survivors passed down PTSD abnormalities to their grandchildren. It's not something they set out to do. It's not something they chose to do. It's done unknowingly, subconsciously. Dr. Yehuda also found that mothers who were pregnant during 9/11, if their traumas resulted in PTSD, that susceptibility was passed on to their children. And when offspring are affected by their parents' trauma, there's a counterpoint in the body that reflects this. Now, this bit of research has sent me on a journey of discovery, looking at my grandparents, my great-grandparents' lives with an eye for the stories behind the facts. What were their early lives like? What hidden traumas might they have passed on? Because it has an effect. And so I called up two of my aunts, one on either side of the family, to ask about what they knew of our family history. And I found out some information that I had no previous knowledge of, like my maternal grandmother was a young adolescent when she came over to Canada from Britain on a livestock carrier ship and narrowly escaping the London bombing that had begun in World War I. I also found out that she and my grandfather were secretly married at age 15. Both of them were 15 years old. I don't know how they even did that without their parents' permission, but I guess back then you could do it. And then a year later, my grandmother became pregnant the following, and at that point, they had to tell both families what they'd done. Until then, it was a secret. I got to tell you that neither family was very impressed by this news. And she had her first child at 16 and went on to have 14 children in total, my mother being one of them. And so that gave me a glimpse into her life. My father's parents were also born in England and emigrated to Canada when they were young. In fact, in 1912, they met each other as children on the ship coming over. And the two families became lifelong friends and neighbors, and so my grandparents grew up together, played with each other as children, and later married. There are many interesting stories to be told about our earlier generations that can give us some insight into our own family dynamics, and not all stories are happy ones. You know, the British have this ingrained tendency to have a stiff upper lip, to carry on no matter what's going on and not talk about the unpleasant things in life. Like, for instance, when World War II ended, my grandmother lost a beloved brother who was killed on the way home from the war. The war had ended. He and his buddies were heading for the ship to bring them back to Canada when their Jeep struck a landmine. How much of my great uncle's traumatic end is encoded within my genetic makeup? How much of my great grandmother's grief in losing her son has made its way into my psyche, even though it was never spoken about? And so transgenerational traumas, misfortune, unresolved conflict in our ancestry can create disturbances in the family field, which filter down into our psyches and our nervous systems and our metabolic functioning. Our ancestors might have been living with poverty and immigration and nutritional deficits and family violence and abuse, addiction, emotional unavailability, wars, incidents and habits that likely originated in personal hardship and were fortified by the cultural norms of the time. So the bottom line is this: physical characteristics are not all we inherit. Other family dynamics are passed along. Coping strategies, beliefs, unfinished business accompany our inheritance. And in my family, staying busy was a good thing. It was a good sign. Being a human doing was something that was encouraged. And I have to deal with this every time I think I'm going to take a break. I feel like I should be doing something, and not only something, but something constructive, So this family trait, it doesn't feel to me like it was manufactured. It just feels like that's how life is for me. And that's the way it comes out in our own lives. Family trauma can go on unhealed and unexpressed for generations. Unconsciously, we can bring forward the effects of those traumas. Now, I want to be clear, none of this is our fault. And none of this is our parents' fault or our ancestors' fault. But it is our responsibility to get beyond unhealthy patterns of behavior that have been passed down from generation to generation unconsciously, because until we do, we will just keep perpetuating those unhealthy patterns. And I don't know about you, but I'm ready to say the buck stops here. Maybe this is something I inherited, but it's going to change with me. Now, here's another thing. We don't have to be conversant with every single thing that has happened to our ancestors over the centuries to do this healing work. It just happens to interest me, so I'm delving into it deeper. But truly, to heal our past, we just need to work with the triggering moments in our current life. Do you see? This is important for us. That triggering moment it's the key to shining a light on what unfinished business may still be alive within us. You know, I read recently that we repeat what we don't repair. We repeat what we don't repair. Pain not transformed is pain transmitted. And while we cannot change history, we can learn to differentiate these inherited tendencies in our family field from our own true self. That's the work. So part of our cultural evolutionary transformation involves our own integration of unfinished business from the past. Our personal development mirrors our cultural evolution from infancy through adulthood. And if we have any unhealed wounds from our early life, it will be mirrored for us in the outer world. And we'll need to clean that up in order to move forward into a new paradigm of living unencumbered by the stumbling blocks from the past. So we can identify some of these patterns as we look at our own anxious words and fears and behaviors and physical symptoms, things that trigger us. Being a good ancestor means cleaning up our own internal backyard, and I have used the Q process many times to aid in this work. With the Q process, I was able to actually clear an ancestral wound that had been oozing for decades as I revisited a moment from my past. And just to set it up for you, my paternal grandmother was babysitting me at the time. I was very young. And she came into the kitchen and found me at the stove burning food, practically burning the kitchen down. And she yelled at me to stop. And what came out of her mouth was, "Can't you do anything right?" Now, I have to tell you that my grandmother was the most kindest, most compassionate soul you'd ever want to meet. She never raised her voice, ever, to me. And so that moment was very traumatic, just to have her yell in the first place. And so it had its effect, it had its effect. Later she apologized, she was so sorry she had done it. But it really left an impression on me that stayed with me all these years. And I wasn't even aware of it. That's the thing about it. Even though it was buried in my subconscious over the years, it was still alive for me. And when it surfaced, I was taken right back to the fear and the upset that I'd experienced in that moment as a child. And from a young age, I internalized the idea that I didn't measure up in some way. I can't do anything right. It stayed with me. And as I did the work with the Q process, I suddenly saw the entire scene through the lens of my grandmother. And I realized how horrified she must have been for my safety. No wonder she yelled and just blurted that out. And as a grandmother myself, I could see how much she regretted that moment. I know how I would regret it with my own grandchildren if I'd blurted out something like that. And I was filled with such compassion for her. It was flowing from my heart. And in that instant, I felt a healing occur, a generational healing. It was like this loving thread ran through my grandmother, to my father, to me, to my children, to my grandchildren. And it was a joyful moment to be released from something in the past that I didn't even know that I was tied to. So let me tell you, this work is powerful, powerful stuff. So being a good ancestor means that we heal any family dysfunction that's been passed down from parent to child, stopping the handoff, you see, stopping it, being the one to end the nightmare, and forgiveness is the key. forgiveness. When we're triggered, we see what is being reflected in the mirror, we use it to identify a pain point within, and we do the integration work. This is what it is, and it's never too late to heal wounds from the past. Any living member of a family can do this intervention for the benefit of all. As we confront our larger family story, our children and our grandchildren don't end up shouldering their ancestors' pain. And in this way, we actually set our own ancestors free through our healing. And then we pass it along to our family members, our loved ones, our descendants. This is not woo-woo. You know, when you set your own past free of unforgiveness and pain, it sets others free as well. So I want to invite all of us to take some time to really get the power of this. In your own life, consider what unspoken grief is written within your ancestral history. What relatives have had tragedy in their lives? Who might have struggled with poverty or political oppression or addiction or abuse, lost a child, had a trauma early in life? Trace the genealogy of emotional patterns in your family. And guess what? If you have no way of knowing the answers to any of these questions, just notice your own triggering moments when they arise. That will give you a clue as to what may be lurking under the surface. Ask your heart for guidance as you consider this potentially life-transforming question. What is blocking me from being who I've come here to be? Ask and listen. You won't be steered wrong. And then use whatever emotional healing modality that works for you. The Q process works for me, but there's others too. You can go into therapy if you need to. Grief counseling, family constellation work, shadow integration, mindfulness, prayer, whatever works for you. Get support for this work if you need it. And so the key to being a good ancestor is to heal and integrate your own past. That is the power here. And we do that as we embrace our shadow self by facing triggering events as they arise with compassionate curiosity. Compassion is important in this. We let our heart guide us. And most importantly, remember that the universe has your back as you're doing this work, as you're taking action that demonstrates your wholeness with compassion, with self-compassion. Because when you do, you gain the ability to help transform our world. And here's why. Because the universe really does have your back. We are backed by limitless power, limitless intelligence. And as we clear ourselves of psychological noise and static, giving divine love a clear pathway to flow through our hearts, there is nothing that can get in our way of a healed world. Nothing. It's the law. Spiritual law. Spiritual law is impersonal, but it responds to personal beliefs. And if you remember from last time, principle is not bound by precedent. Whatever's happened in the past, we each hold the key to healing in our hands right now. Do you see? And it's time for us to be doing this work. As Pam Grote writes, there is no reason to wait an instant longer for the endless peace and joy and miracles to which we are entitled. No reason to wait an instant longer, and this is how we do it. So I invite you to stay tuned for part 3 of being a good ancestor as we shift our focus from what have I inherited to what do I want to leave as a legacy? What do I want to bequeath in my life? And so I'll look forward to talking to you then. Blessings.
All right. Wow. Time to take it to heart. So, I love that saying, it's not our fault that we're kind of carrying all of this baggage and all of the things that we've inherited, but it is our problem. You said responsibility. I like to know that, yes, my responsibility, but no, it's really my problem, because this is integral to my well-being, is being able to own this, that is a part of my journey, because we are here to heal. And we do carry with us a huge energetic burden of believing that what we receive from our parents or our caregivers, is who we are, as opposed to what we can become. I've, as you were asking the question about trauma, think about family and stuff. I recall when I was very, very young, learning that my dad had to shoot somebody, killed a person in the line of duty as a San Francisco police officer. And not knowing at the time the impact of that event, not only in terms of his own personal life and our family life, him resorting to alcohol and that whole dynamic of what he became because of that experience, basically had impact on me and my 3 other brothers. And not even connecting that consciously, but just to know that happened, and it had to have an effect on me. And so what and how am I impacted, and what do I do to carry that impact on in my relationships with my children? And certainly the estrangement that I'm experiencing right now with my brother, with my daughter, is all connected to this trauma and the inability to have really managed those moments without it making us who we are.
Exactly. Even when it's never spoken about, even
That's
when
right.
you think it's in the past, it's the unexpressed grief and all the rest that causes all of our stuff. And so and that's why self-compassion is paramount, and self-forgiveness, and sometimes why we need extra help to do the work, extra support, for this very reason. We have tender hearts, and when we can learn to treat ourselves with kindness and caring, and to do the healing work within ourselves, the whole world benefits.
Right, and that's really important, because while we can't do stuff in terms of what's going on in the environment right now with all the fires and all the things that's happening with the smoke and all the things that are a part of what's going on. I mean, there's some things that we can't just wave our hands and say, okay, it'd be better now, but there are lots of things that we can do in the midst of all this that mirrors those places in ourself where we are smothered by our own sense of not enough, or not able to take in the fullness of life because of our own sense of limitation or unworthiness. I mean, we're suffering on that level as we are with respect to what's happening in the outer. So we have to choose which fight we're going to be in, as opposed to, anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to give a shout out to Sean and Tani, and their choice of that song was so perfect, because that's the work.
Yeah.
That's the work, is to be being that beaming love and joy to the world. And when we clear out, what's keeping that, what's blocking it, that's why I say everybody wins.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's thank everybody for supporting us, and as you know, we welcome your generosity, especially during these times, and we give thanks in advance for the support that comes, that enables us to continue during these times. So, all right, it's time now to do our offering ritual. So we're going to affirm together our offertory blessing, and as you can see it on the screen, we invite you to join us, if you will. Together, I know that my giving blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, and all that I give and receive. I give thanks for the abundance that is mine to share. So remind everybody that we'll go to our Zoom meet and greet, and apologize for having to cancel the service, but we thought that would be
The
best
outdoor
for everybody.
service.
The outdoor service, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to have Vishal and Tani sing us out, and before we do that, we're going to stand and affirm together our prayer for protection. And so if you at home want to do this, it just gets you up out of your chair and gets different energy going, and let's close with this prayer. Together, the light of God surrounds us. I am the light of God. The love of God enfolds us. I am the love of God. The power of God protects us. I am the power of God. The presence of God watches over us. I am the presence of God. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. And that's the truth. All right, so take it away, Sean and Tani.
Sweet Sean, how fun is that?
Thank you.
We have another fun tune. It's something that all of you know, but we put a little spin on it for today's service. And we hope you join along and sing, Let There Be Peace on Earth. And it's a little jazzy feel, so hopefully you can get jazzed up today and enjoy the day, even though we can't tell if it's night or day. Right, Sean?
Exactly. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be, with God our Creator. Family all are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my song now. To take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
Will you take your little drum with a whistle